Ever since I was little, I would escape into my imagination time and again, not really knowing the power that was vested in it. For me, though, dreaming about possibilities or escaping into my imagination was a part of the process that involved my struggle, striving, and creation. But many would label my tendency to get lost in this little world of my own as an escapist or mindless and futile endeavor that would really yield no results. But today, I am here to talk to the dreamer in every single one of you and encourage you all to immerse yourself in this realm of possibility by giving free rein to fantasy as I take you on a journey that goes beyond circumstance, beyond limitation, and beyond whatever is in your present. As we head into this realm where we imagine what could be and bring its magic through the process of creation. So come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. In this talk, I'll talk about striving, about breaking through, and the process of carving my own path. And through my story, I hope to inspire anybody that is feeling stuck or caged and suffocated in their present, because I would like to demonstrate that it is possible to break through and create a future for yourself that goes beyond whatever would be due to your circumstance. I firmly believe that imagining the future changes it, and today I would like to demonstrate the role that imagination played in the creation of my present. So we'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. Now, before I head into my story, I would like to just preface my talk by briefly introducing the concept that I'll be bringing up today with a small exercise. This is the concept of mindful imagination. So I want you all to make a grip like this and consider it to be your mindfulness. But I also want you to step away and head into this realm of imagination. Now go side to side and move back and forth. You realize that the deeper you go and the more you move, the harder it gets to keep your grip right there, the harder it gets to stay mindful. I hope you can keep this exercise in mind because I'll be referencing it throughout the talk. Now let's head in. What I really want to talk about today is actually dreams. So there are many circumstances that limit our dreams and many predicaments that impose restrictions on the nature of our dreams and what we truly consider possible for us in the future. Most of the time, though, we just come to internalize and believe all the things that we have been told lie in store for us. And as such, our thinking and imagination are restricted because we come to see all the dreams that have already been dreamt for us. Now, my story of dreams began at birth in India, quite comically actually. So I was born quite premature, and when my father held me in his hand, he started crying. When the people at the hospital saw him, they were like, "Oh, he's crying because he had a girl child. We sympathize." When really he was just crying because I was so premature and he was really worried about my health. So since this moment on, my life, societally at least, had a negative bias towards it. And even though my parents gave me all the love in the world, all the dreams that they could even see for me were dreams that were already written and manufactured by society. This assigned gender at birth dictated who I was, what I could be, and what I ought to be, and limitation was sort of the nature of my reality. For years, I was told that my fiery and masculine temperaments were unladylike and therefore nobody would marry me, and that I had to change myself to fit into regressive ideas of femininity so that I had all the ideal qualities of a wife so that someday somebody would marry me. Now, this is important because Indian society literally deems marriage to be the biggest milestone of a woman's life, the ultimate purpose that she's there to fulfill. Now, unlike my grandmother and so many other women in India whose fates are sealed in their teens when they get married off, my life still had some hope for it, a hope that I could not see for a very long time. But this was because for years I was all I was hearing was that ladki paraya dhan hoti hai, which means that my parents and my family weren't even my real family, and that at my marriage, my parents would literally donate me away to this other life. And so every single moment of my life was literally preparing me for this purpose of getting married. And even though my education was emphasized, it was always a means to an end. And I remember at the time when my parents were supposed to be saving for my education, they were saving for potential dowry and ceremonious costs of marriage for me and my sister. At that time, I felt like my education wasn't being emphasized, but in retrospect, it makes sense because it was literally going to be the biggest expense of their lifetime. And every single thing that I had to do in life was sort of decided for me. My education, to my career, to like how I would get married. And I felt this intrinsic lack of agency in my life. And anytime I would exclaim my desire to be free or independent, I was told that before my marriage, I was under the guardianship of my father, and after my marriage, it would be my husband. So freedom, independence, or having a life of my own were not really words that I knew, were not even the dreams that I could see. And for years, I just internalized this reality and came to believe it. And any time that I was mindful of my circumstances or my present, I would just become complacent in it and submit to whatever was happening in front of me and whatever was in front of me. And so in this kind of mindfulness, all I was seeing was what was in front of me, and I could not go beyond to see all the possibilities for myself. And because of exactly this, I would escape into my daydreams and in this la la land where I was just this escapist daydreamer. But I believe that your imagination has immense creative power, but this can either be unmanifested or misused. And this was the pendulum that I kept swinging on, because on one hand, my imagination was unmanifested when I was doing mindfulness in a complacent way, where my mindfulness was inactive and passive because all I was seeing was what was in front of me, and I could not transcend and go beyond to see all the things that my future and my reality could look like. Now, if you go back to the grip that we made, if you stay at that reality, if you don't move and you don't transcend, what happens is that you get attached to it. When you're in that present moment, you get dragged along by life into a future that would be. And this was the unmanifested kind of imagination where I was doing mindfulness wrong. And because of exactly this, I swung to the other end of the pendulum where I was this escapist daydreamer, where I would get lost in this la la land, and I was a lost boy from Neverland. And this was literally the pendulum I was swinging on, but I believe this was because I was taught mindfulness wrong for a very long time. I was told that I was supposed to be in just the present moment and just see what was in front of me. But today I want to tell you that that kind of mindfulness is actually so inactive and passive. And the kind of mindfulness that I want to teach you today is actually a transcendental kind. One that goes beyond that present moment and heads into this realm of possibility where you see all that could be. Even your past, present, and future exists. So there is this reality, which is two-dimensional, and there is this other reality, which is your reality of imagination, where there's so many possibilities and so many things. And you have to create this conjunction, make that pendulum stop swinging, and you come up with mindful imagination. This kind of mindfulness that is so transcendental that you're able to see beyond your reality. And we all know that there is more to reality than what meets the eye. And that's just what I'm here to show you today. The first step I had taken towards carving my own path was actually to start mindfully imagining instead of swinging on this pendulum. When I started mindfully imagining and working with my reality in my imagination instead of against it, I started creating possibilities that could actually occur for me. Because imagining within your reality is sort of like creating doors for yourself. It might not be possible to open all of them, but if you'd never thought of something, it would never be a possible option for manifestation. And I just want to emphasize how important mindfulness really is, because initially I reacted to the idea of it because I was seeing it wrong. But with your imagination too, you have to be mindful. You have to be mindful, because when dreams become more important than reality, You just get lost in the thought record where you're just daydreaming and you forget to create and do things and exist in your reality. And both parts of my pendulum swinging were actually complacent. And mindful imagination is the one that is active. Mindful imagination is the one when you start carving your own path. Now, when I started expanding my horizons, actually seeing that maybe my future could look different, and saw this within my reality instead of this other reality, I realized that maybe I could make it come true. I expanded my barriers to another point. I expanded my barriers from here to here. Now, what do I mean by this? I want you to take a look at this balloon. Now, if you see this balloon in the two-dimensional reality, the reality where you just see what is in front of you, you'll only see those barriers, these barriers that are right here. But with your imagination, you actually blow into the balloon and you turn this reality to a three-dimensional reality, which brings in the realm of imagination to this 2D reality. Before, what I was doing when I was escaping was actually blowing out to the balloon. But working with reality is to blow in the balloon, and you have to once again do it mindfully, because you remember, the deeper you go, the harder it gets to keep your grip. And the same goes with the balloon. The more you blow, the more you risk bursting the balloon. But you have to slowly, with trial and error, blow it. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And that is how you know that you are expanding your horizons and you're testing your true limits of your reality instead of the limits that were there in the first place when you were doing mindfulness in this passive way. This is how I would sort of describe mindful imagination. But now that we've spoken about mindfulness, I actually want to talk about action and activity that I've been emphasizing for so long. Now, your action and activity, either psychological or real action, can be of two types. Now, initially, my action, the psychological one, when I was imagining, my striving was in it. But your action can be of two types, real or psychological, correct? Now, this is either reaction or proaction. And I was sort of always a reactive. I would just react to things when I was stuck in between the stimulus response cycle. But because I was a reactionary, I sort of lost mindful imagination. Now, let me explain. So I reacted to mindfulness, say, when I was taught it for my ADHD-like inattentive daydreaming. And then I also reacted to my gender when I was told, this is what it means to be a woman. So I was like, okay, I'm a boy now. Anytime I was told to do something, I would just do the exact opposite. And overall at school and otherwise, I was seen as this reactive, rebellious, and oppositional delinquent. Now, were any of those stances that I took that were oppositional wrong? Not really. But I forgot to mindfully imagine. I just jumped from one place to another. I could not see all the possibilities that were there. I could not see how mindfulness was useful. I did not see the beauty of my gender nonconformity, etc., etc. And I want to say that proaction does not mean that you don't take oppositional stances. I did take one, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But proaction is a little bit different. It is using mindful imagination where you're being mindful and not mindlessly reactive and examining possibilities before action. Say, for example, I did take that oppositional stance when I was told that you had to become a doctor or an engineer. And I was like, no, I want to become a social scientist. And even though I was coerced into taking STEM subjects, I stepped my foot down and I was like, with or without your consent, I'm going to take these subjects at school. But this was a proactive action. Why? Because it was something I was doing for myself, not just because it was something that I was reacting to. I was carving my own path, not just a reactionary path. And that is why I want to emphasize proaction today. Because when you're being proactive, you start carving your own path. And slowly, I started opening my parents' minds to possibilities of what my future could look like. I asked them, if I got a full scholarship out of India, would you let me go? They were like, okay. But I'm pretty sure at that point, they were just thinking that I was building castles in the air. But I was so stern on finding a way out for myself that I started using all this imagination and proaction to build my path. And so, like I said before, the 2D and the 3D, I was using the 3D when I was actually getting inspired from my past. Seeing for years when anytime I confronted somebody about their gender bias, they would just get defensive and I usually didn't end up accomplishing anything. And so maybe like the way I expanded my parents' horizons to possibilities of what my future could look like, I could expand people's horizons to different worlds. And I thought that maybe I could come up with a board game that would reduce gender-based implicit biases using storytelling and role-playing. And this was this and this was an idea that I pitched to a research team in Bangalore called the Collective Mind of N Lab, and I asked them if they would help me. And to my amusement, they were readily and to my amusement, they were actually really ready to help me. With their help, I was able to bring this game to fruition and I applied for the National Science Fair in India. And at this National Science Fair, my game was selected to represent my country at the Intel International Science Fair. And when I heard my name on stage, I had tears of joy. Because what it meant for me was that maybe I could have this new life that I wanted for myself. And soon after the fair, I heard from the University of Toronto that I had been awarded the Lester B. Pearson Scholarship. And all of the cards just turned in my favor, and I felt like I had created my path towards this end, towards this new life where I could have the education that I wanted and pursue the career that I really wanted for myself. I feel that using mindful imagination and pro-action, I was able to carve my path into this new future. But I would just like to say that it is not always possible to break through, and I would not dismiss any role that luck played in my life. Sometimes the balloon you're given by life is so small and the barriers are so thin that you can't really blow much into it. And this is the story of countless women in India who still have the strength every day to face their reality head on and be mindful in their reality. And I am the story of all of these women. I am my grandmother's story, and I am my mother's story. But I'm really just this bird that gets to sing and fly. And I'm so, so eternally grateful for having carved my own path and having found a way to find meaning and fulfillment in my life and career. And I would not dismiss that maybe someday I could find it in a traditional household, but at least now it's not limited to it. And I hope that we all today can support each other and build each other up while we're all trying to face our realities and carve our own paths. Hopefully now using mindful imagination and pro-action. I hope you enjoyed the talk and have a good day.